Welcome to Excelling in Christ, the podcast where our goal is not just to talk about being a Christian, but to really explore what it means to be a Christian and actually live the Christian life. We don't want shallow modern definitions. What we want to do is dig into that book, chapter, and verse understanding. I'm talking about original Christian teaching, 2,000 years old, and follow as best as humanly possible the teaching that Jesus delivered when he was here in person. Now, if that appeals to you, then I am rather sure you'll enjoy today's podcast, because we're going to look at Luke 6, verse 46 through 49. This is a really simple passage. In fact, it is self-explanatory. If you just sit down and read it, you get the message of Jesus. You don't even need me to tell you what Jesus said. Some passages are tough. Some are difficult. We can get lost. We can misunderstand them. We can end up going the wrong direction. And some passages are like milk. Some of them are like the baby bottle. They give us our bearing. They are our North Star. And this passage is one of those North Star passages. If you'll just read it and ponder it, you know what Jesus is looking for when he is seeking to make disciples. That's what he tells us in Luke 6, 46 through 49. He just defines discipleship or Christianity for us. And now, I do need to say, this is really kindergarten level stuff here. This is preschool. And I get kind of tickled that Jesus knew that we adults would need this preschool level information to be sure that we stayed on track and didn't get drug off in some crazy direction and end up not living the Christian life we want. So Jesus gives us the definition of discipleship, the definition of Christianity, and that, of course, is his job. It is not my job to define what a Christian is. It is Jesus' job. And our role is to get behind him and follow him as our leader. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's what Christians do. And Jesus' message is just wonderfully simple. Again, it is just so simple that we can teach it to a preschooler out of this passage. However, the odd thing that happens here, and this is kind of what I'm addressing, is that there is this modern grace theology that denies what Jesus says in this passage. There are people out there who believe that Jesus does absolutely everything for you to obtain your salvation, and there is nothing for you to do. And in other words, it's like going to a birthday party, and all you have to do is sit back like the guest of honor and get your birthday presents and just enjoy them, and there is no work or responsibility or accountability on your part. And when you look here at Luke 6:46, that's not what Jesus taught. I'm not really sure where all of that mumbo-jumbo came from, but I go back to the Bible and I build on that book, chapter, and verse foundation. I can see with my own eyes, and you can too, exactly what Jesus taught. And so now what we do is we have to make a choice. Do we want to follow Jesus, or do we want to follow some other teaching that we like better? So let's get to Luke 6:46. He said, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things that I say?" Now, this is a rhetorical question. Jesus did not expect them to actually give him an answer. He wasn't looking for an explanation. He was simply making a point. When Jesus teaches us to do something and we say we're going to follow him, he expects us to do it. Now, isn't it that simple? It is just that wonderfully simple. I don't care how a person defines grace and what other doctrinal ideas they get into. Jesus is clear in his expectation. If we are going to call him Lord, Lord, then he expects us to do the things he said to do. There are things to do in Christianity. It is not just sitting back and taking birthday presents in. There is a responsibility. There is a cross to bear. There is a straight and narrow path to follow. And so he says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things I say?" And then he gives us the very next verse, which is not just a bridge verse. He says, "Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and acts on him, I will show you who he's like." Now, he gives us three things in that verse. He says, number one, we've got to come to him. Think Matthew 7:7, seek and you'll find. And then we have to hear his words. We have to really listen, contemplate, take them in. And then you catch that third part. He said you have to act on them. So he says, everyone who comes to him hears his words and acts on his words. I'm going to tell you who he's like. And he's going to give us the man who built his house on the solid foundation. Now, to me, this is just common sense. If I'm going to follow Jesus, then I need to do the things that he said to do. But there are a lot of folks that just annul Jesus' teaching with their modern grace theology. But Jesus is crystal clear. So he gives us two examples. He says the wise man, of course, that's the man building his house. He dug deep. He laid a foundation. And then when the flood came and it burst against that house, it couldn't shake the house because it had been built well. It was on the rock. So notice what the disciple did. The Christian dug deep. There's your action. There's your intention. He laid the foundation. There's a lot of labor there. Again, action, intention. He was focused on the rock. He wanted to get down to that book, chapter, and verse foundation and lay a solid foundation. But then Jesus contrasts the wise worker, the wise Christian, with the lazy one. And he said, the one who hears and does not act accordingly, like the man who builds his house without any foundation, and the storms come up against it, and it falls, and great is its ruin. Now, does Jesus offer the lazy, irresponsible disciple any assurance in this passage? And the answer is no, he doesn't. This is a warning. He says to the lazy disciple, look, if you're not going to do what I say, when the storms hit your life, you're going to crumble. You're going to fall apart. So they were saying, Lord, Lord, thinking they were safe. They had an inside track with Jesus, and he just called them on the carpet. He said, why are you calling me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things that I say? And then he explains to them in the most elementary, simplest of terms, they are not safe. If they're going to profess to follow him, then they need to really take up their cross and follow Jesus. Now that's what he said in another place over in Luke 14:27. He said, whoever does not carry his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. So Jesus' message, painfully clear. Professing to follow Jesus and actually following Jesus are not the same thing. People that don't do the things that he taught are the foolish builder, and their end will be in ruin and disaster. Now, what I love about this, and I think you're going to love it too, is you don't need to be a Greek scholar to see this. You don't even need a preacher to show you this. All you need is to open up the book there at Luke 6:46 and read those 4 or 5 verses, and I know God gave you enough sense to see it for yourself and understand the truth for yourself. Luke 6:46 through 49 is simple, back to the Bible, sincere milk. Like I say, that's your North Star. This is a foundational teaching of Jesus. He defines what a Christian is, and he gives you an answer that is really self-evident. Now, a Christian then is someone who seeks out Jesus, listens to Jesus, and acts on Jesus' teaching. And again, I love this because this is not my words. This is not my interpretation. I am just telling you what Jesus said, and you can read it with your own eyes, and then guess what? You'll be following Jesus, because that's exactly where I am pointing you to. I don't want you following me. I don't want you following anybody else. I want you walking in the footsteps of Jesus, and so as much as I can, I will keep pointing you back to that book, chapter and verse foundation, and encouraging you to read it with your own eyes and think for yourself, because I really believe God gave us enough sense to hear, understand, and surrender to his word. Hey, thanks for listening to this little podcast. I appreciate it. If you like the message, then let's work together and let's get that book, chapter, and message out to other people. You can text them a link to this podcast. You can share it wherever you do your social media. And as always, I hope you have a great day.